everyone, I'm Amanda McFillin with the Historic New Orleans Collection, and welcome to this year's New Orleans Antiques Forum. We are bringing the road trip to you. We are so excited to be here today at Magnolia Glen. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the town of Pineapple and a little bit about the history of the land and the people who have lived here over the years?
Well, it's interesting because we're actually not in the town of Pineapple, although it is our zip code.
Okay.
This is actually the town of Furman, an unincorporated community established in the early 19th century here in Wilcox County, Alabama. It was a planter class of people who came generally from South Carolina and Virginia and established their homes, businesses, and churches here between 1820 and 1840, really. Currently, we have 18 full-time residents on a good day. But it's interesting because at the turn of the 20th century, this town had over 600 people in it. 3 full-time doctors, 2 full-time dentists, and if you needed medical attention or dental care, you came here, which you can see some of the remnant structures in the quote-unquote downtown area, along with 2 beautiful churches, one of which built in 1858 and then another that was built around 1885. It is oftentimes the case that you can find arrowhead and other paraphernalia, primarily Creek nations, because it's been pretty much untouched other than through planning since that time. This house was built by Stephen and Juliet Palmer in 1833. They used virgin cut timber from the property to build the house. You'll see heart pine floors, walls, and ceilings here at Magnolia Glen. And the interesting story of the house is they sent their son Oscar, who was 12 at the time, in December of 1832, 6 months in advance of their arrival, in the company of the Fowler family and 10 people they enslaved, to clear the land for planning and to start construction of the house. They arrived June 3rd, 1833, and lived here up until 1905, they and their descendants. And from 1905 until 1992, when we acquired it, the Parlor family used it as a farm. It was a working farm throughout their tenure.
All right, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Oh wow, it's beautiful.
Thank you. Welcome to the dog trot.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, we have 2 pieces with New Orleans history here. These 2 cabinets on my left and right were made by Francois Seigneuret, and the one that we're looking at here actually has a Seigneuret pencil label signature in one of the drawers that Daggs documented when they were here in 2017. Another interesting piece in this room that you'll see on the Philadelphia sideboard to your left is a meat platter made in France in the 1840s for William Rufus Devane King, the United States' 13th Vice President of the United States. He was actually the only member of the executive branch ever to be inaugurated outside of the United States on foreign soil. You may notice on the side light to your right, up around the front door, there's a bullet hole just below it. When the Parlor family owned it, an unfortunate tragedy where one of the sons was killed right at the front door of the house, and ever since, our local community has decided that it's haunted. I will tell you, I've been here over 10 years, and it is not. But if you ask any of the locals, there are haints in this house. Welcome to the preacher's room here at Magnolia Glen. Originally in 1833, the door behind me wasn't here because at the time, they felt it was inappropriate for the family to have private access to the preacher that came here to give sermons on Sunday mornings. Here to my left, you'll see an American secretary. It encompasses 12 secret compartments, many of which I still haven't quite figured out myself. More importantly is what's on it. On this piece is the original inventory of Magnolia Glen, written in 1850 upon Stephen Palmer's death. What you'll see on this inventory is a list of the enslaved population that worked here on the grounds of Magnolia Glen. And you'll see the drapery treatments here are reminiscent of Percier and Fontaine's book from the mid-19th century. All the textiles you'll see in their house were created by my mother. She's a French hand sewing specialist who designed them and created them herself using 19th century sewing techniques. This is how we would see the room in the 1850s. Welcome to the Parlor here at Magnolia Glen. The important suite of furniture we have here is an 8-piece parlor suite that was retailed at Prudent Millard's shop in New Orleans. It's only owned by one other family besides ourselves. We acquired it about 5 years ago. My mother was part of the restoration project and found the fabrics that you see on it today. And then 2 years later, we were able to acquire the bookcase that was part of the original suite that Judge Sneed of Memphis bought in New Orleans. He had it shipped up the river to Memphis, where it stayed in a home called Maxwellton, which is still there in Memphis today. And when the family sold the home, we were able to acquire the parlor suite you see today. This is the chapel here at Magnolia Glen, which is original to the structure. It's one of the only known chapels in a private home from this period that exists in Alabama. The Gothic windows that you see with the angel heads on each are original, as is the mantel, which was brought with the family from Virginia for this room. It's a very interesting mantel in that it's hand gouged, which is very atypical of this area. The parlor suite you see was our 11th governor, Governor Benjamin Fitzpatrick, and it came from his family home around Talladega. You'll see founding fathers throughout the room because, again, the family was from Virginia and they had a deep-rooted love of our founders. Welcome to the master bedroom at Magnolia Glen, which was originally the formal parlor. This is where we would have greeted our guests, but as it's the only room without a door connecting to another room, it's the master bedroom now. In this room, we have a number of pieces of furniture that came from just down the road in Pineapple, Alabama, the collection of Miss Jessie Allen Stewart. Our family was able to acquire her collection, which had moved to Florida not long ago, and bring it all back to Wilcox County. One of those pieces is this, what we call a pot-belly sewing table. What's interesting about it is that there's one large piece of veneer that encompasses the entire belly of this cabinet. Very unusual form, drop sides, but quite functional for a lady in the 1850s or 1860s. Another piece of Miss Stewart's furniture is this full teaster bed that was retailed in New Orleans and then brought here to Pineapple for use in her home. An interesting part of the bed is the turning, both of the posts and certainly of the reading on the feet of this bed. This is the dark bedroom here at Magnolia Glen. It's a unique room in that it's never been painted. So what we're looking at is a 187-year-old virgin cut heart pine timber in its natural form. Some of the boards in this room and the ceiling are over 20 feet in length, are 8 to 10 inches wide. It's unique to find any room that hasn't been painted and or the floor hasn't even been finished. So you're seeing it in its natural state. Interesting pieces in this room are the full teaster bed that came from a home in Mississippi. We do have the actual teaster, but it's in the closet because the ceilings are a little low. But most importantly to me is the heart pine blanket chest, which my great-grandfather built on his farm in Mississippi sometime about the time that this house was built, maybe a little later. The green velvet drapes and the tartan plaid that you see above them are also products of my mother's hand. The beauty of Magnolia Glen is not what we see today, but it's the series of families that have owned it and what's happened in its history. The most recent history is when my parents bought it in 1992. It was a shell of its current state. The back half of the house was leaning at about a 26-degree tilt. You couldn't walk into the front door because the porch had rotted out, and most of the windows in the upstairs were missing. It had been vacant for about 20 years by the time they acquired it. They did all the work themselves. Mom drug the cinder blocks under, and Dad, who's an aerospace engineer, jacked it one by one until it was level. They live 4 hours away in the city of Huntsville. This was their weekend project and every vacation for almost 20 years to get Magnolia Glen to where it is today. It's the story of the house. My most favorite thing is the story of the house. How the Palmers sent their 12-year-old son for 6 months to clear the land. How I'm sitting in a room where there are boards that were cut from those trees that had never been cut. And then how the Barlows used it as a working farm to feed their family through very hard times, through depression. And we've been able to recreate it through my mother's talents in sewing and my father's talents in structural engineering and caulking. He'll tell you to this day this house is held together by caulk. And its story is funny too, because not only did they save it, but there's been struggles along the way. For example, there is no shower at Magnolia Glen. The footed tub was all my mother could handle. You'll notice in the kitchen there's still hot water and cold water spigots because we wanted to keep it as period appropriate as possible. And for many years, because there was no shower, we did not have a dishwasher. So for about 18 years, neither one existed. One of the absolute great stories of the house, now that I think about it, is the kitchen floor. The kitchen floor had been covered by shag carpeting and linoleum, so many layers that it had damaged the original heart pine. But to save the floor, Mom and Dad decided to flip every board upside down. So when you look at it, it's strange compared to the rest of the floors in the house, but by flipping the boards, they were able to preserve the original heart pine floors in the kitchen. It has been an absolute joy to share in the final phase of the restoration and bring the house and the objects here with my parents and us opening Magnolia Glen to the public. It's just so much of their story. And to think they were driving back and forth 4 hours to do it is pretty special.